Don in London. Hello. My video for March 11, all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My addictive substance was alcohol. My behaviour could be equally addictive around people, places and things. And these days I don't drink one day at a time, and I try not to obsess about people, places and things one day at a time. All good, and this is courtesy of family, community, medical people and a fellowship, and that fellowship is AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is where I focus in these videos. How does AA help me on a daily basis? And it's through meetings of AA. What you see is what you get on a daily basis, good and bad. And there is no such thing as a bad meeting for me, because all meetings mean something. They trigger off something in me to do with my feelings and how I deal with reality. I don't speak for AA, never can, never will, never want to. AA is full of unique, authentic people who choose to share their message of experience, strength and hope where they will. Some in the public domain, some privately or within meetings where anonymity is sacrosanct. For me, anonymity is as important as it can be in terms of confidentiality that you would expect of your doctor, your priest or your confidant. So we know in fellowship that gossip kills. So I try as best I can never to reveal anything about other people by name or by intention. And so far I feel I've actually been able to do that. So yes, the fellowship, anonymity, all important, and I don't speak for it. I just speak for myself and how AA helps me day by day. And the backbone of that is meetings, but when I can't get to a meeting I use the literature of AA, and I also utilise the telephone so I can speak to people who know the malady of alcoholism and where it takes a person emotionally and spiritually. So emotionally, if my feelings fit the day I'm having, that is, my emotions seem to fit the experience of now, then all well and good. But if my emotions are over the top in some way, either overly happy or overly sad or raging and angry or something like that, it probably means that I'm out of balance. And out of balance is where the extremes of character defects, as they are called, tend to manifest. So either we can have euphoria or absolute extreme sadness or anger or resentment, and when that happens it's time to get to a meeting or phone somebody or just stop, ask myself, am I hungry, angry, lonely or tired, and what's going on for me? So the fellowship has taught me some very useful life skills, and that's the reason why I share experience, strength and hope via these videos. About life skills, I guess, which have got a bit of a bad name because a lot of people have been trying to train people on life skills when they don't have them themselves. So we're only as good as the day on which we present, and that's me too. So some days good, sometimes not so good. Anyway, what is AA and how does it help me? I share the AA preamble, and I want to talk about one of the chapters in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. A bit of a tall order if you try to do it on your own. And what we find in the fellowship, more than anything, is we lean on the many in order to keep sober, and that's why meetings are so important. So if we go to a meeting we hear many people speak and not just one person, like here on the video. So it is the many voices which give us the wisdom to find our path on a daily basis. And the book of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, this one, the big book as it's called, is packed full of wisdom, which any practicing alcoholic doesn't want to hear, simply because when we're in the malady we prefer to shun the world, stay isolated, or pretend we're alright. So one of the major character defects I had during my drinking time at the end, when it got to 24/7 and I just couldn't stop doing it, was isolated, fear of everything, putting on a brave face when I went out to find some more drink, and a very brittle ego keeping me away from the world. But if you asked me how I was, either I would tell you and fall down or break down, or I would say, get lost, leave me alone. And often we see people in that state where they just don't want to know us because it's just too hard to express anything. So in this book, AA, chapter 3, more about alcoholism, I'm going to share it and see how it goes. More about alcoholism, chapter 3. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death, and for me, being taken to intensive care unit at the time, I just didn't realise how ill I was. And I was very gung-ho, and I laughed and joked about my situation, but it was desperately, desperately close to an ending. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we were like other people, or presently may be, has to be smashed. We alcoholics are men and women who have lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovers control. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control, which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. We are convinced till now that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Over any considerable period we get worse, never better. We are like men who have lost their legs. They never grow new ones. Neither does there appear to be any kind of treatment which would make alcoholics of our kind like other men. We have tried every imaginable remedy. In some instances there has been brief recovery, followed always by still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet. And the problem is, if we rely on science to fix us, we're looking for a fix. Simple as that. And as it seems to be a malady or an illness of emotions and spirit in the sense of our spiritual connection to reality, how on earth can a pill fix us completely? Or how on earth can science fix emotions? That's what we were doing with alcohol. Despite all we can say, many who are real alcoholics are not going to believe they are in that class. By every form of self-deception and experimentation, they will try to prove themselves exceptions to the rule, therefore non-alcoholic. If anyone who is showing inability to control his drinking can do the right about face and drink like a gentleman, our hats are off to him. Heaven knows we have tried hard enough and long enough to drink like other people. Here are some of the methods we have tried. Drinking beer only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, never drinking in the morning, drinking only at home, never having it in the house, never drinking during business hours, drinking only at parties, switching from scotch to brandy, drinking only natural wines, agreeing to resign if ever drunk on the job, taking a trip, not taking a trip, swearing off forever, with and without a solemn oath, taking physical exercise, reading inspirational books, going to health farms and sanitariums, accepting voluntary commitment to asylums. We could increase the list ad infinitum. And I tried all those things, but I didn't know I was trying them. I would swear off on a Sunday, and by Sunday night I'd be at the bar or the off licence having one or two just to steady my nerves to get ready for the working week. And worse, when I was working weekends mainly, as well as during the week. I would never swear off, because I needed it to blot out reality, the reality of my situation, continually doing something over and over again which was not worthy and did not fulfill any sort of emotional sense of well-being. Namely, the work I did. I might have been good at it, but it didn't mean I ought to be doing it. So not only do we find in recovery that we were doing things to alleviate the problem and find oblivion, we also found probably in recovery that we needed to change our whole career. We do not like to pronounce any individual as alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once. It will not take you long for you to decide if you are honest with yourself about it. It may be worth a back case of jitters if you get a full knowledge of your condition. Though there is no way of proving it, we believe that early in our drinking careers most of us could have stopped drinking, but the difficulty is that few alcoholics have enough desire to stop while there is yet time. We have heard of a few instances where people who showed definite signs of alcoholism were able to stop for a long period because of an overpowering desire to do so. Here is one. A man of 30 was doing a great deal of spree drinking. He was very nervous in the morning after these bouts and quieted himself with more liquor. He was ambitious to succeed in business, but saw that he could get nowhere if he drank at all. Once he started, he had no control whatever. He made up his mind that until he had been successful in business and had retired, he would not touch another drop. An exceptional man, he remained bone dry for 25 years and retired at the age of 55 after a successful and happy business career. Then he fell victim to a belief which practically every alcoholic has, that his long period of sobriety and self-discipline had qualified him to drink as other men. Out came his carpet slippers and a bottle. In 2 months he was in hospital, puzzled and humiliated. He tried to regulate his drinking for a while, making several trips to the hospital meantime. Then, gathering all his forces, he attempted to stop altogether, and found he could not. Every means of solving his problem, which money could buy, was at his disposal. Every attempt failed. Though a robust man at retirement, he went to pieces quickly and was dead within 4 years. And when you think about it, 4 years of trying to stop is a horror. But many alcoholics, and me in my case, I don't know how many years I really thought there might be a problem, but denied it and kept on going. And it kept me doing things which were not good for me, like the type of career I had. And it's only with the benefit of hindsight I see that. This case contains a powerful lesson. Most of us have believed that if we remained sober for a long stretch, we could thereafter drink normally. But here is a man who at 55 years found he was just where he had left off at 30. We have seen the truth demonstrated again and again. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Commencing to drink after a period of sobriety, we are in a short time as bad as ever. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. And it took me years to understand that. And that's a horror in itself again. And this whole feeling that we are in charge and can control some things beyond reasonable doubt, we are fooling ourselves often. I can only speak for me. I was certainly fooling myself, because I would go dry for a long, long time, and then when I started drinking I sought what I looked for before. That was oblivion. Young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think they can stop as he did, on their own willpower. We doubt if any of them can do it, because none will really want to stop, and hardly one of them because of a particular mental twist already acquired. We will find he can win out. Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, have been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those who have been drinking for 20 years. To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time, nor take the quantities that some of us have. This is particularly true of women. Well, I don't know about that. I think men and women are equal in this, in the terms of the malady, but anyway, continuing. Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing, and they are gone beyond recall in a few years. Certain drinkers who would be greatly insulted if called alcoholics are astonished at their inability to stop. We who are familiar with the symptoms see large numbers of potential alcoholics among young people everywhere. So, what do I know now? Well, there are so many young people in the fellowship around where I live, in London, UK, and it is gratifying to see that they stay sober and they understand the malady far better than I ever did at their age. In fact, nobody understood it, as far as I could see. As we look back, we feel we had gone on drinking many years beyond the point where we could quit on our own willpower. If anyone questions whether he has entered this dangerous area, let him try leaving liquor alone for a year. If he is a real alcoholic and very far advanced, there is scant chance of success. In early days of our drinking, we occasionally remained sober for a year or more. I did that. Becoming serious drinkers again later. I did that. Though you may be able to stop for a considerable period, you may yet be a potential alcoholic. We think few to whom this book will appeal can stay dry anything like a year, and this is the point I was making. We think few to whom this book will appeal can stay dry anything like a year. Some will be drunk the day after, making their resolutions, most of them within a few weeks. And for me, I did try doing it for over a year. The advice was, don't drink and see if we can help you with your depression. And the outcome was, I stayed dry for a year, was depressed, and then found a drink and had more and more and more, and it made me more depressed. So from clinical depression down into God knows what desolation, to a place where I wouldn't wish anybody, not even my worst enemy. For those who are unable to drink moderately, the question is how to stop altogether. We are assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. And if it asked me up until the last day, do you really want to stop? I would say yes, but in my head, deep down, I would say no. Hence the thing about denial. Whether such a person can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. Many of us felt that we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it, this utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish. And, as I found out, it is an emotional and spiritual malady, as well as, of course, the addiction to the liquor itself whilst we're still taking it. How then shall we help our readers determine, to their own satisfaction, whether they are one of us? The experiment of quitting for a long period of time will be helpful, but we think we can render an even greater service to alcoholic sufferers and perhaps to the medical fraternity. So we shall describe some of the mental states that precede a relapse into drinking, for obviously this is the crux of the problem. So what makes us relapse? I'm sure anybody watching this who is an alcoholic has many reasons and understandings as to why. So here we go. What sort of thinking dominates an alcoholic who repeats time after time the desperate experiment of the first drink? Friends who have reasoned with him after a spree which has brought him to the point of divorce or bankruptcy are mystified when he walks directly into a saloon. Why does he? Or what is he thinking? And that's it. What am I thinking when I do that? Of course, of our first example is a friend we shall call Jim. This man has a charming wife and family. He inherited a lucrative automobile agency. He had a commendable war record. He is a good salesman. Everybody likes him. He is an intelligent man, normal so far as we can see, except for a nervous disposition. He did no drinking until he was 35. In a few years he became so violent when intoxicated that he had to be committed. On leaving the asylum he came into contact with us. We told him what we know of alcoholism and the answer we had found. He made a beginning. His family were reassembled and he began to work as a salesman for the business he had lost through drinking. All went well for a time, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. To his consternation he found himself drunk half a dozen times in rapid succession. On each of these occasions we worked with him, reviewing carefully what had happened. He agreed he was an alcoholic and in a serious condition. He knew he faced another trip to the asylum if he kept on. Moreover, he would lose his family, for whom he had a deep affection. Yet he still got drunk again. We asked him to tell us exactly how it happened. This is his story. I came to work on Tuesday morning. I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. On the way I felt hungry, so I stopped at a roadside place where they have a bar. I had no intention of drinking. I just thought I would get a sandwich. I also had the notion that I might find a customer for a car at this place, which was familiar, for I had been going to it for many years. I had eaten there many times during the months I was sober. I sat down at a table and ordered a sandwich and a glass of milk. Still no thought of drinking, I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk. Suddenly the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. I ordered a whiskey and poured it into the milk. I vaguely sensed I was not being any too smart, but felt reassured I was taking the whiskey on a full stomach. The experiment went so well that I ordered another whiskey and poured it into more milk. That didn't seem to bother me, so I tried another. Thus started one more journey to the asylum for Jim. Here was the threat of commitment, a loss of family and position, to say nothing of that intense mental and physical suffering which drinking always caused him. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favour of the foolish idea that he could take whiskey if only he mixed it with milk. Yeah, well, what have we mixed alcohol with over the years? Whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? And it is the insanity of thinking he will be different yet again. You may think this is an extreme case. To us it is not. Far-fetched. For this kind of thinking has been characteristic of every single one of us. We have sometimes reflected more than Jim did upon the consequences, but there was always the curious mental phenomenon that, parallel with our sound reasoning, there inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink, or going out with a new girl. She's having a drink, and well, why shouldn't I? One won't hurt, will it? And that was insane. Now sound reasoning failed to hold us in check. The insane idea won out. Next day we would ask ourselves, in all earnestness and sincerity, how could it have happened again? And it was the same old, same old. Yes, I felt okay for the night and whatever might have transpired, but in the morning I didn't know myself any more than anyone else. In some circumstances we have gone out deliberately to get drunk, feeling ourselves justified by nervousness, anger, worry, depression, jealousy, or the like, or just desperate to be normal. But even in this type of beginning we are obliged to admit that our justification for a spree was insanely insufficient in the light of what always happened. We now see that when we began to drink deliberately, instead of casually, there was little serious or effective thought during the period of premeditation of what the terrific consequences might be. So we don't think it out, we don't think about the consequences, and often we ask ourselves, today, sober people, if we do this, what will be the consequences? So we stop long enough to respond, or phone a friend. Our behaviour is as absurd and incomprehensible with respect to the first drink as that of an individual with a passion, say, for jaywalking. He gets a thrill out of skipping in front of fast-moving vehicles. He enjoys himself for a few weeks in spite of friendly warnings. Up to this point you would label him as foolish, as a foolish chap having queer ideas of fun. Luck then deserts him, and he is slightly injured several times in succession. You would expect him, if he were normal, to cut it out. Presently he is hit again, and this time he has a fractured skull. Within a week after leaving the hospital, a fast-moving trolley car breaks his arm. He tells you he has decided to stop jaywalking for good, but in a few weeks he breaks both legs. And you know, that's what we do with alcohol. It's the thing of taking the edge off. Everybody else is doing. It's legal. It's okay. I'll be all right. It won't be the same as last time, and that's the insanity of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something different to happen. I guess we'd be sometimes lucky if we just broke our legs. On through the years this conduct continues, accompanied by his continual promises to be careful or to keep off the streets altogether. This is the jaywalker. Finally he can no longer work. His wife gets a divorce and he is held up to ridicule. He tries every known means to get the jaywalking idea out of his head. He shuts himself up in an asylum, hoping to mend his ways, but the day he comes out he races in front of a fire engine, which breaks his back. Such a man would be crazy, wouldn't he? You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit, if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may be, but may have been, in other respects where alcohol is concerned or has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true? And the idea is, why on earth would I keep on going back to hurt myself? Why on earth would I keep on doing these things to myself? And the simple answer is the madness or the malady of trying it over and over again just to be normal. And that's frightening. Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did. Nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you've told us that such things cannot happen again. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information. Now, if I'd had that information sooner rather than later, it wouldn't have made any difference, because the malady had taken me to a place where I couldn't reason when it came to alcohol. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking foolishly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate, because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize, to smash home upon our alcoholic readers, as it had been revealed to us out of our bitter experience. Let us take another illustration. So self-knowledge avails us nothing. So it took me a long time to actually realise that no matter how smart I might be, or intellectually gifted, or just have common sense and gumption, it didn't seem to work when it came to alcohol. There was a fatal flaw in me. I wouldn't look in the mirror and understand it, because it couldn't be me. Fred is partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good, he has a fine house, he is happily married, and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearances, he is a stable, well-balanced individual. Yet he is alcoholic, We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so, in spite of his character and standing. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that his humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told that he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns, yet he was flat on his back nevertheless. Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident, that it would be only a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on my guard. In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks, and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about it. Physically I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. I ordered a cocktail and my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed, so I stepped into the bar and had one. I remember having several more that night, and plenty next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an aeroplane bound for New York, and of finding a friendly taxicab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I know little of where I went, what I said and did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. I commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they had prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come. I would drink again. They said that though I did raise a defence, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen, and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. And for me, it didn't seem like a crushing blow. It just seemed like a relief. Thank God I know I am an alcoholic. Two of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I did not like so much. Yeah, I wouldn't have liked it. I'd have told them where to go. And then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic, and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. They piled upon me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Yeah, and it took me a while to realise that no amount of self-willpower. Self-will will fail, I've discovered, because self-will becomes self-obsession, and then self-will run riot to the extremes, and in a happy or ecstatic frame of mind there is danger, and at the low ebb of depression and desolation there is also danger. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant that I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. That was not easy, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. And as one clergyman recently, an archbishop actually said it, when asked what is spiritual, he reflected and said, it's the ability to cope with reality. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and, I hope, more useful than the life I've lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. And I feel like that too. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had felt only the first nip of the ringer. I'm smiling here because I went through the ringer a few times, simply because I was defiant, stubborn, and thought I could do it on my own. And what I've learned is fellowship is the key. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. And you know what? For me, I'm not the worst example. I'm just an average example. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless, apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you, if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have a profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defence against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defence. His defence must come from a higher power. That's the end of chapter 3. And it's important for me to state that it's the higher power that you come to understand, whether it's based in your faith and your religion, or whether it's based in just plain faith, or the courage to keep on changing and be a part of living reality as it is today. So emotional, right feelings, right sized for the right experience, for the experience we're having, and spiritual, as the religious leader suggested, and I feel that it works for me too, is the ability to cope with reality. So everything is spiritual, even all the drinking days and all the days that follow, one day at a time sober. I wouldn't trade it intentionally and go backwards. But you know what? We're all in the same boat in the same day, same pressures, and catastrophes can happen. And so far there have been quite a few catastrophes for me. Loss of everything, and then starting again. In some ways it felt better to do that. But I wasn't doing it intentionally. That's how it happened. And that ringer is extremely painful. And how many times do we really want to go through it? So emotional feelings, all the feelings, not suppressing them. It takes a while for those to work themselves through, and then to be able to live our feelings, feeling things in the moment of now, emotional and spiritual well-being as best we can. We'll always have those I can't believe it moments, and I can't believe it's horrible, tragic and awful, or I can't believe it's so good I just can't believe it. Denial is part of us, so it's not a bad thing unless it's ongoing all the time, about who we are and what we can do. Enough. And at the end of these videos, as I always share the Serenity Prayer, which is about spiritual well-being as much as anything else. To the God of your understanding, or simply good conscience, or a higher power that you perceive works for you, good or lead drunks, whatever it happens to be. To God of good conscience, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, for me, is just for today. My addictive substance was alcohol, my behaviour equally addictive to work, relationships, materialism, you name it, people, places, things, determined to be perfect in the way I thought you thought I ought to be, or trying to be perfect. And never ever perfect, just simply I didn't know the meaning of progress. And that's very strange really, because a lot of my life was about training and developing people into being able to do whatever they wanted to do in their life, their job, and whatever it happened. I think they call it life skills these days, but in the olden days it was more of a journeyman, just helping people where they were, what they wanted to do, and how to improve life. And you know, it's a bit like physician heal thyself. I couldn't. What did I do? Well, on my journey of perfection, and never perfect, never satisfied, I was always trying to fix myself, fix my feelings, understand what spiritual might be, understand what it's like to be fit and able. So a gymaholic as much as anything, a relationship holic, workaholic, and drinkaholic, and I didn't know what drink was doing to me. Is it that we're in denial or ignorance? I don't know. I don't know where ignorance stops and denial starts. I knew that alcohol had become a problem for me, and I remember stopping for a year or so just because I thought it was a good idea. But life was difficult, and life remained difficult. So what does somebody do if they want to fix the feelings or fix and try and be okay? We look for something which we've done before, and we can find ourselves back in the old insanity of doing the same old thing over and over again and expecting it to come out differently. And of course with drink dependency, where does it head? Into addiction, of course, and that's what happened to me. So a long career of trying to make it look right, trying to fix myself, and these days I realise there's no point to trying to fix something. It's more important to live what is and make choices based on good information. So where do I get my information about being sober? Well, I had a moment of clarity, thankfully, because family, friends, community and professionals kept me alive long enough to find one. and that was I could not beat addiction on my own. No matter how much I tried, self-will became self-obsession, and self-obsession led to addiction, or addictive behaviour, both attitude and behaviour. So these days, trying not to be addicted, trying not to fix myself, because I can go back there into old behaviour which is based on fear, putting on a brave face, and covering up with my ego, which is so thin, it's like an eggshell, and if you break the ego of a person who's addicted, you find anger, frustration, rage, depression, all covered up by taking a drink, or taking a drug, or behaving to extremes. Difficult. Once we're in that behaviour, it's with us forever as a daunting prospect if we don't know how to keep sober, emotionally, physically and spiritually on a daily basis. So I needed help. And where did I get it? Well, I was very reluctant. I heard about a fellowship called AA, didn't like the idea, it sounded like a kooky dogma, something weird which I didn't want to be a part of. And when I went there, first of all, I said, yes, I am an alcoholic, and ran away to the pub, the bar, more drinking. So these days, after a while of going back and listening to people, just simply listening to experience strength and hope, life has changed, and I learned that I did not need to drink today, and I don't need to drink today either. It's a one-day program, one day in a lifetime, and we don't know how long we have. So if we concentrate on what is in front of us, in the here and now, we have a better understanding of what can happen and the choices we can make based on the information in front of us. Life. So I talk about AA fellowship. I share the AA statement of intent, or preamble, which is shared at every meeting of AA I go to, and I'm looking forward to getting back to them when my foot heals a bit more. And a little bit of the literature of AA to back up what I'm sharing. So I start with the AA preamble and then share a bit from the literature. And the AA preamble reads like this: Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So important in there is sharing a message of experience, strength and hope, just sharing a message of what's working and also what's not working, because life is a bumpy road with potholes and puddles. So, it's not a bed of roses. And, what sobriety has given me is the opportunity to work out what to do in the hardest of times, as much as the best of times. And somewhere in there is balance, the balance of living in the now. And with society as it is today, living in the moment of now is extraordinarily difficult, because we're looking at our history and how it was, and we're wanting a future which maybe is impossible. So if we cover our needs today, just what we need to do today to make life work, or not make it, but live life so it does work, then we have a better chance. So I share from the Daily Reflections this book, and it covers the 12 steps of action in the action program of AA. And that 12-step program is about changing our attitude and behaviour, and the 12 steps help us is a toolkit. So each step has relevance, and one is covered each month in this book. So March is all about turning our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. And that word God always bothered me in my drinking days, because my father didn't believe in God, and I of course believed him to be right. So I came to an understanding of what God might be in my life, which is simply truth, the truth of now. God is truth. God is love, the most important emotion that keeps us going when everything else is not going too well. And God works through people, which is the wisdom shared. And I get wisdom about sobriety, emotional and spiritual, from fellowship and from life as it is now. So here we go, the reading for today. good orderly direction. It's when we try to make our will conform with God's that we begin to use it rightly. In other words, be informed by what's going on around us. To all of us, this was the most wonderful revelation. Our whole trouble had been the misuse of willpower. We had tried to bombard our problems with it instead of attempting to bring it into agreement with God's intention for us. In other words, living in the day as it is. To make this increasingly possible is the purpose of AA's 12 steps, and step 3 opens the door, which is opening ourselves up to the possibility that other people can help us. All I have to do is look back at my past to see where my self-will has led me. I just don't know what's best for me, and I believe my higher power does. Good orderly direction, or God, which I define as good orderly direction, has never let me down. But I have let myself down quite often. Using my self-will in a situation usually has the same result as forcing the wrong piece into a jigsaw puzzle: exhaustion and frustration. Step 3 opens the door to the rest of the program. When I ask God for guidance, prayer and meditation that is, I know that whatever happens is the best possible situation. Things are exactly as they are supposed to be, even if they aren't what I want or expect. God does for me what I cannot do for myself if I let him, and it is all about getting our expectations right-sized and understanding that we're a part of the world and we don't control it. We have our choices based on what is in front of us. So that serenity prayer to acceptance always helps me, and it goes like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference is simply and always just for today. Substance or behaviour. So living in recovery from addiction, my substance was alcohol, my behaviour trying to be perfect all that time, and certainly not perfect all of that time. Nowhere near perfect, but you know what? I thought the world wanted me so, and I judged myself very harshly along the way, trying to be perfect. And what was I trying to do? I guess in many ways I was trying to cover up what I felt were inadequacies or areas in me which I didn't really like, and my way of doing that: keep people at arm's length, not let people in. And we're still subject to everything that life offers, and it feels like life is repeating itself over and over again, and somehow we learn a little bit each day how to change our outlook, our attitude and behaviour. So with good fortune these days, I'm in recovery from my addictive substance, recovering alcoholic for nearly 5 years, and that's no mean feat, although for me these days the drink is not the issue, it's how I live and how I behave and what is my attitude to life. And interestingly, a death of a close friend on Monday, and another ending to the never-ending relationship which I've been in, and again, no fault, no foul by either person, just a failure maybe to communicate. And yeah, I guess it is a failure to communicate the truth. But I remember back in 1991 when my father was dying and he was given 3 months to live. He stopped drinking and stopped smoking, and I asked him why, and he said, well, I've got nothing to fear, I know what my ending is. And he also said to me, always cherish people and look out for when you're being treated superficially or with indifference. And I had to apply those measures to myself several years later. Was I indifferent and superficial with myself, or did I cherish myself? And the answer was no, because I was in a malady, an allergy which I could not get out of, and that's addiction to substance and behaviour. So back then in 1991, my father dying, my lady away, and we split up. I won't go into the details, it's unfair for her, and for me probably too. But here I am again, a dear friend dies, and another ending of a relationship. What's the difference these days? Well, simply I have a fellowship which helps me keep going on the path of truth as best I can find it for myself. And don't forget, I lie to myself all day long sometimes, wishing things differently. And I have to look at my own behaviour. I cannot change another person, place or thing on this planet. All I can do is change my attitude and behaviour to me, and then cherish me and cherish other people, love myself enough to love other people, or I'm a hypocrite, I guess, or I'm working from my ego rather than my confidence and self-esteem. So life is difficult, and we keep on repeating patterns, or patterns of life keep on repeating. It's our outlook and our attitude towards those, the experience of living these moments now. What is the difference between 91 and 2009? Well, I don't pick up a drink on a daily basis, and I don't try and hide as much as I used to, and I try to look for the truth in me. And how did I do that? With good feedback from people like my friend who's passed. So, what's it all about for me, recovery? Well, going to fellowship and being part of. And at the beginning of every meeting of the Fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, we share a preamble. Don't forget, though, I do not speak for AA, I only speak about how it helps me with my life. And the AA preamble goes like this, shared at every meeting. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. All my videos. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I go to meetings, and last night I went to Christchurch, which is a bit further down Flood Street from the Remembrance Hall, where there are many meetings of AA. And it was all about let go and let God. Step 3, we're in March, it's all about step 3, and step 3 reads clearly, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And it's not my interpretation of God that's important here, it's yours. I only have mine for me. And I'm sure out of 6.5 billion definitions, that's how many people are living on the planet, there is some similarity and many differences, but the similarities probably are overwhelming, that it is probably an appeal to good conscience often when we pray or meditate. So I don't mind whether somebody's an agnostic, an atheist or a God believer, it doesn't matter to me. It's all that matters is how I'm conducting myself to good conscience and to the God of my understanding. And I take on what Gandhi said, God is truth, God is love, God works through people. And daily reflections for today, this one, daily reading, all about step 3, or partly about step 3 in March, being the 3rd month. It is when we try to make our will conform with God's that we begin to use it rightly. To all of us, this was a most wonderful revelation. Our whole trouble had been the misuse of willpower. We had tried to bombard our problems with it, instead of attempting to bring it into agreement with God's intention for us. To make this increasingly possible is the purpose of AA's 12 steps, and step 3 opens the door. All I have to do is look back at my past to see where my self-will has led me. I just don't know what's best for me, and I believe my higher power does. God, which I define as good orderly direction, has never let me down. But I have let myself down quite often. Using my self-will in a situation usually has the same result as forcing the wrong piece into a jigsaw puzzle, exhaustion and frustration. Step 3 opens the door to the rest of the program. When I ask God for guidance, I know that whatever happens is the best possible situation. Things are exactly as they are supposed to be, even if they aren't what I want or expect. God does for me what I cannot do for myself, if I let Him. And I feel actually that when we actually understand that God doesn't take sides with human beings, and that it is human beings and man-made problems which often get in the way, it is misuse of willpower, and good conscience can help us as best it can. There's a poem by Max Ehrmann which I shared with a friend of mine, and I just want to read it out. Go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons, they are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career. However humble, it is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself. Especially do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here, and whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labours and aspirations. In the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a wonderful world, beautiful world. Be cheerful, strive to be happy. Max Ehrmann. And for me, strive to be happy. Maybe that is the key. And to understand sadness and ask myself for serenity. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. But this is all about AA. AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I've been in touch with one or two people on a personal level over the last few days trying to be helpful. And what I know is about the demon drink. Once we are drinking as an alcoholic, or we have become an addict and we have the disease, it's almost impossible to deal with it on our own. And self-will has got us into a situation where drinking is all we can do, and it's beyond our power to stop on our own. And what I found over the years is the number of times I stopped and said, never do it again. And I remember every weekend on a Sunday lunchtime, I would pour away anything that was left. So by Monday morning I would be clear of it. And yet, by Sunday evening, before the day I'd even got to Monday, I'd be back out at a bar or a pub, or going to the off-licence and making sure I had enough of a stash to see me through the night. And you know what? I was so blinkered. I didn't really realise that I was an alcoholic. How can I say that and mean it sincerely? And the simple answer is, when we do something which seems like second nature, and we've been doing it for a long time, and we've put ourselves in a place where nobody really knows what we're up to, we know that that behaviour cannot be challenged. And because we are not challenging it that strongly, and we feel dependent, we just accept it as part of our life. And that's a horrible admission, really, that I had to accept. Or did I accept? No, I didn't even know. Ignorance is bliss, I feel. And listening tonight to somebody else sharing their story, and in a general way, they compressed their drinking and outcomes into a much shorter space of time. And when people get this program much earlier in life, I am so glad that they did. And if only, well, there is no if only. The absolute truth is we get this program if we can, or we die. And that's sad. That's very sad that some people never get to understand what it's like to live without some mood-altering substance inside them. And there's a lot of lay doctors around Alcoholics Anonymous or any anonymous fellowship. Lay doctors are ordinary people who think they know better than medical professionals. And often they say, for those who have got clinical depression, they need throw their pills away and rely on the program or fellowship program of AA or any other anonymous. And the answer is simply beware what you hear in the rooms of AA around medication. Medication for depression does not make you happy. All it does is improve your chemical balance so that you can find whatever mood you have available to you based on reality. And what that means is that some of us need medication to find that playing field, the normal playing field of living, where other alcoholics who do not have clinical disorders enjoy recovery and respite on a daily basis. And you know, it is only for a day, so we have to be careful what we say, what we do, and what we understand. And watch out for baloney from lay people who think they have professional understandings and in fact have no understanding whatsoever. And that also applies to me in certain instances. So you need to take everything on balance and always include a professional view, if needed, about what is going on. Anyway, the daily readings for the next day come from AA's Daily Reflections, and it says for March 12th, a day's plan. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be delivered from self-pity, dishonest or self-seeking motives. That comes from the Big Book of AA, page 86. And for me, God is truth. So if I go for the truth of what is me and the day, I'm in a better place. Anyway, it goes on to say, every day I ask God to kindle within me the fire of His love, so that love, burning bright and clear, will illuminate my thinking and permit me to better do His will throughout the day. As I follow outside circumstances to dampen my spirits. I ask God to sear my consciousness with the awareness that I can start my day over any time I choose, 100 times if necessary. So I had to pause there to make sense of it. What it's really saying is we can restart the clock upon any particular day at any particular time. Say, hold on, let's just look at where we are and what's going on and what is the absolute truth of the situation, which is probably, as I say, God is truth. The absolute truth of the situation is I can play my part in what's going on to the right size. That's the size I am, and with the information at my disposal. So when we get tormented by situations, we can say, hold on, let's start again. And that's very good, because when the bus driver misses us, or the lorry splashes us with lots of water, or when our bosses are unkind to us, we say, well, you know, that's just part of what they are saying. And I need to look at what is being said, and also make it right-sized. And if I don't know what the right size is, ask. Coming on to As Bill Sees It, with old Bill, co-founder, page 99. The slipper needs understanding. Slips can often be charged to rebellion. Some of us are more rebellious than others. Slips may be due to the illusion that one can be cured of alcoholism, and the slip is actually taking a drink again. Slips can also be charged to carelessness and complacency. Many of us fail to ride out these periods sober. Things go fine for 2 or 3 years, then the member is seen no more. Some of us suffer extreme guilt because of vices and practices that we can't or won't let go. Too little self-forgiveness and too little prayer. Well, this combination then adds up to slips. Then some of us are far more alcohol damaged than others. Some of us encounter a series of calamities and cannot be seen to find the spiritual resources to meet them. There are those of us who are physically ill. Others are subject to more or less continuous exhaustion, anxiety and depression. These conditions often play a part in slips. Sometimes they are utterly controlled, and it's like being overwhelmed, if you like. Overwhelmed by what we have to cope with and what we have to deal with. And I was listening intently to how people are doing, even in a meeting like tonight. You know, so many issues about somewhere to live, a job to have, other people undermining their situation. We are undermining their situation, and as one person bravely said tonight, sometimes when people share, that is, they start to share back to somebody who's said something in the room, it can be very disconcerting. And what we have to ask ourselves is, what is our spiritual, emotional and physical condition on a daily basis? And the answer can be spiritually okay, emotionally not so okay, physically maybe okay or not okay. So there are so many combinations. And really, if we understand where we are in the moment, that is where we get our spiritual connection. And the spiritual element of life is not all about good. It's not all good. We have to have the absolute awfulness of life to know the difference. And it's a bit like the serenity prayer. Accept the things I can, change the things, accept those things I cannot change, and change those things I can, and get the wisdom to know the difference. Anyway, trying to get through the 24-hour day book tomorrow. I'm going to do an early morning one as well, I think, in future, just in case. So for March 12th, the prodigal son took his journey into a far country and wasted his substance with riotous living. That's what we alcoholics do. We waste our substance with riotous living. When he came to himself, he said, "I will rise and go to my Father." That's what you do in AA. You come to understand yourself. Your alcoholic self is not your real self. Your same sober, respectable self is your real self. That's why we alcoholics are so happy in AA. Have I come to myself? And I guess to an extent I have. Just being sane in the moment sometimes and recognizing when insanity is upon me. Anyway, enough for now.